Okay. Hopefully, you're seeing that there's a lot of video here in this slideshow. I think I'm going to give you 5 full periods to finish it. So, this is the fourth slide. This one's going to cover the Cuban Missile Crisis and a little bit about Soviet problems during the Cold War. The last one will cover the fall of the Soviet Union, and it'll be the final quiz on the Cold War overall. Okay, so the Cuban Missile Crisis. There was basically a nuclear arms race uh, going while Cuba was having the revolution and becoming communist. And this impacts Cuba because after Bay of Pigs, there was a concern with the security of Cuba, especially an American invasion full scale of Cuba because of the proximity to the U.S. So Khrushchev was trying to support uh, communist Cuba, and so he sent nuclear weapons there. And also, it was a reply to weapons being placed by America in Turkey, nuclear weapons, and that's really close to the Soviet Union. And so they started taking steps to place intermediate nuclear weapons in Cuba. That could hit New York City. That could hit Washington D.C. I think that's the limit. It couldn't hit it could hit Texas. I don't know about maybe L.A. Probably not L.A. Probably not San Francisco, but it's still really close. If you could take out the capital, and it would be faster instead of the long distance nuclear weapons, interballistic ones. These ones you might not be able to send a missile back, and that kind of lets MAD break down, and it's really destabilizing. In October of 1962, there's a missile crisis, and uh, Kennedy's intel people, I don't know if it was the CIA or the Navy, they said, or the maybe it was NSA and the Defense Department, but they learned about the missiles through satellite technology. They had these pictures, and they were able to determine. I mean, I'll show you the, some films where they show the picture. I don't know how that from that they get that it's. I think the film clip that you're going to see here is going to show it to you. I don't know how they get from that to that's a nuclear missile, but they do, and they know more about these things than I do. So okay, technology orders, and they Kennedy's told you have to invade now. You have to invade. You have to. That's it. You can't live with Cuba there. And he's like, what? I learned from the Bay of Pigs. I'm not gonna invade. What else can I do? The other thing they could do was a blockade, even though it didn't work for the Soviets in Berlin. Maybe it'll work for us in Cuba without having to go full scale nuclear warfare, World War III. The result is from the blockade was the Soviets ended up backing down, and the weapons get pulled from Cuba in this little side deal that wasn't really published. And in exchange for the removal of nuclear weapons in Cuba, the Americans agreed to remove nuclear weapons in Turkey, but they didn't really publish that part of it. They just published the fact that the Soviets backed down on supplying nuclear weapons to Cuba. And yeah, because America was trying to save face. And America promised not to invade Cuba. That they did publicly, and to stop trying to kill Castro. There had been various American attempts to assassinate Castro. All right. I'm going to show you the slide, and then I'd like you to go ahead and play that video. See how it was in the cover of the newspapers? We blockade Cuba arms. There's a film called 13 Days because the world was really concerned that we're going to kill each other. Here you have Khrushchev and Kennedy arm wrestling, and both with the finger hovering over a button. And they're sitting on a big nuclear arsenal. It's like they're sitting on it as they're arm wrestling. So this was a threat. Okay, go ahead and play the video, and then push pause while you're doing that, and then push unpause when you're done, and then we'll learn about Vietnam. Okay, about Vietnam. Let's start with the notes again. I've been liking that a little more. Um, by the way, if you get these things where it like is barely hanging on a page, just move it to the next page. You're gonna want to make it look nice, so you can easily go back and read it quickly. That way, the notes are useful. France had controlled Vietnam since the 1800s. They had colonized Vietnam, much like the British had colonized India. In 1954, uh, the French are infamously defeated at a place called Dien Bien Phu. It's just a final defeat for the French, who, like the British, were kind of wore out as a dominant empire after World War II. And after this, the French are like, okay, we had enough. We're going to withdraw from Vietnam, even though we don't really want them to go communist or be independent. We're out. Who steps in? America. America's like, okay, we got to step in because of containment theory. Because if Vietnam becomes communist, then Cambodia becomes communist, then Laos becomes, and eventually India, then China, then the whole world, and blah 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 blah. You know, one thing is not causal necessarily. Uh, that's why it's a bad theory. But okay, because of that theory, America felt compelled to jump in. Um, Vietnam has their own parallel of division. Vietnam's parallel is the 17th. Vietnam is hotter, so their number is closer to the equator. Their number is lower. That's how you remember. Korea is colder. That way, their parallel number is higher. That's a good way to remember. That's how I remember. There's snow in Korea. There is not snow in Vietnam. There is jungle in Vietnam. There are mountains in Korea. It's a good way to think of it geographically and I don't know, meteorologically, I guess. North Vietnam is led by a guy named Ho Chi Minh. He is supported by North Vietnamese Army, Viet Cong guerrilla forces. Name is with an H. I think being the merciless was a nod to Ho Chi Minh personally. For you Flash Gordon fans, might be just my theory. I mean, the guy's name is Ming. Essentially Ming and Min. Anyway, uh, North Vietnamese Army and the guerrilla Viet Cong forces. So the NBA forces are like regular military guys, but these Viet Cong forces, they would hide during the day. They would blend in with the populace and have other jobs. And at night, they go out and try to cause havoc in the interest of communist Vietnam. And they did. And it was really frustrating to Americans because they couldn't find them. It wasn't a straight up fight. Then again, it's how America fought in the American Revolutionary War. So we shouldn't be surprised by the same tactics we use being used by someone else, but there it was. South Vietnam was supported by the South Vietnamese Army and the U.S. I think that with the U.S. and all its resources, North Vietnamese, the communists, Viet Cong, easily defeated. It's a little tiny country, and yet, no. All right, let's look at the pictures, and then we'll go to the next slide. The person pictured here in this visual, that's Ho Chi Minh. Gives you his lifespan in there. I can't really see it anymore. You might be able to see it. This is, I think, the French surrendering at Dien Bien Phu. They lost a lot of lives. And again, you see the color red here, symbolizing communism. But the Vietnam conflict overall was 100% brutal. Yeah, see, that's his life. Let's say 1880 to 1960 something. I don't know. There you go. Yeah, so 1890 to 1988. That makes sense. Because America fully withdraws in like 73, 74, and then Vietnam is fully communist by 75. and Ho Chi Minh was still leading things at that time. Okay. The Vietnam War is particularly nasty and bloody, and there's these iconic images that are brutal. Um, America was fighting there, and they won pretty much every battle. Killed way more Vietnamese than we had killed. I know the exact number is something like 58,000 Americans killed in Vietnam. I don't know what exactly the Vietnamese number is, but I know it's at least 4 times that, if not way, way more than that. There was a major military defeat at a place called Tet, but actually, eventually they rallied and defeated forces at Tet. Okay, so the video I'm going to share with you is about the Tet Offensive, so I'm not going to tell you too much about it. I will tell you that the Tet Offensive was the Vietnamese New Year, and typically until the Tet Offensive, both sides stopped fighting. But on this particular Tet Offensive, the Vietnamese, the communist Vietnamese attacked throughout Vietnam, and they pushed Americans back at first. And so you see these ghastly images of naked girls running and uh, prisoners on the street being shot in the head. It's just brutal. And America had been witnessing this on the news for a while. This is like the first TV war. And so kind of Tet signaled the beginning of the end for American will to keep fighting in Vietnam. 19 and a lot of the flower power and all the protests were based on ending the Vietnam War. People's brothers and friends were dying, fathers of the war that didn't really make a lot of sense to most Americans. And so after this long and bloody conflict, the U.S. military withdraws from Vietnam. And most historians say this is America's one true defeat in battle. I think that's about right. By 1975, South Vietnam surrendered to the communists. Their military couldn't stand up without America being directly involved. So they surrender. And there's some purging and bloodiness. But eventually, all of Vietnam becomes a communist country. Saigon was the capital of South Vietnam, and it's renamed Ho Chi Minh after the communist leader, Ho Chi Minh City. And it's still named Ho Chi Minh City to this day. After I show you the, I don't know, both Ho Chi and Minh. Yeah, I guess I just need to add in. So Saigon. We just need to add Chi and City. I gotta make it look just so. Some of the more graphic images from the Vietnam War, I'm gonna show you right now. It's gonna be hard to see. I got a weak stomach that's might bother you. But there's this famous video clip of this girl, naked little 4 or 5 or 6 year old girl running from a tank. Sad. Then there's this South Vietnamese army official shooting a Viet Cong in the head on the streets in Saigon. But eventually, after the U.S. withdraws, and it's a kind of crazy withdrawal, um, they're trying to save as many other people as they can. Yeah, it doesn't last. Okay, go ahead and play the video. Hopefully, you can understand why the Vietnam War doesn't last. After you play the video, unpause this, and I'll be keeping on talking on the next slide. And go. Okay. While these things were happening, so the Soviets were having their own challenges during the Cold War. Vietnam was America's cold challenge, but Soviets were not without theirs because they were controlling Eastern Europe with repression. tanks, a lack of freedom. And this usually leads to revolution. And in Hungary, there was a revolution. What happens when they had a revolution? The Soviets send in the tanks. In 1968, there's a Velvet Revolution where a bunch of students rise up in Prague, or I think it was Prague Spring. Maybe it's not the Velvet Revolution. Anyway, the Soviets send in the tanks again in Czechoslovakia. And in 1979, the Afghans are rebelling against Soviet influence, and so the Soviets send in troops. And after a 10 years conflict where the Soviets were facing the Afghanis, the Soviets withdraw in 89 in defeat. Well, lack of victory. So I consider it a defeat. Yeah. And the video clip tells you about the Soviet-Afghanistan war. Let's go ahead and finish the notes first. And then play the video. All right, let's walk through the notes together. What are we filling in here? 1956, rebellion in Hungary, Soviets send in troops. So revolt in Hungary. Revolt, revolution, uprising, whatever, call it what you want. Some people are sick of the repression and they rebel. That's what it is. The Soviet Red Army is the nickname for the Soviet armed forces. But it's really about the army because Soviet army is so big. So you got to type in Czechoslovakia and Prague Spring. It's challenging to type Czechoslovakia. If you can type it, you're more likely to remember it. Try it, even though it's tricky and difficult. Prague Spring. Prague is the capital of Czechoslovakia. Afghanistan. You might have heard of it. America's preparing to leave after being a country there for like 20 years. Been there since 2001 when 9/11 happened. I don't know how much good we've done. I know we're a bigger target in the world. Terrorism than we were before 2001. So I don't know. Okay, go ahead and play the video, and then I'll conclude the notes for today. I think it was 17 minutes of me talking and 9:43 and 9:30. That's 18, 19 minutes. Yeah, that's enough for today. That should be less than 40 minutes, though. You should be able to get this done in class. All right. We'll finish up with maybe probably like a half a session. One more half a session to finish the lecture. Okay, because it's only one more slide and one quiz. Thanks.